Hi, and welcome back to my channel. It is now 2026, and I want to do my Q4 read recap for 2025 and kind of a general overview of how the whole year went for me. So we're just going to dive right back in. It's been a minute since I've done a video. Our fall got really chaotic, really hectic. I might do a catch-up video at some point on here in the next few weeks of like how the end of the year went. Just chaos as having children and a family and holidays. And I was substitute teaching a lot more, so it just took up more time than I had available. So something had to go. Unfortunately, it was the channel, but hopefully we'll be back for 2026 and we'll just keep plugging away at it. So getting started, we are going to jump right back into the beginning of the fourth quarter of 2025, which brings us to October. So for October, I read 5 books total, 2 physical books and 3 audiobooks. My physical books were The Grapes of Wrath for my book club by John Steinbeck. And I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which came from the library, so I don't have that with me. And my audiobooks that I ended up listening to were Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I just figured this was one that was going to be faster for me if I did an audiobook. I also listened to The Stepford Wives and Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Right around Halloween, I repainted our bathroom, and so those were short little books that were great for the last week or two of October. They kind of got me into the spooky season. Well worth the read or listen. They were short, so I think Rosemary's Baby was like 3 hours, and The Stepford Wives was like 6 hours. So it was the perfect amount of time to spend reading or listening while I was working on stuff getting ready for Halloween. So that was October, so a total of 5 books. Now moving into November. November was a highlight for me. I did so much in November. So in November, I got through 10 total books. 7 physical books and 3 audiobooks. So starting out, my audiobooks were My Antonia by Willa Cather, The Happiest Man on Earth, The Beautiful Life of an Auschwitz Survivor by Eddie Jaku, and The Awakening by Kate Chopin. So I had 2 classics and then 1 more recent book. The Happiest Man on Earth was amazing. It's about 3-4 hours. So I listened to that in an afternoon, and it was just one of those books that, like, even now I still can't stop thinking about it. And the way it was, the narrator had just such the sweetest voice. Well worth it for me to have listened to that. My book club book was An Unfinished Love Story by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And it was an unfinished love story, a personal history of the 1960s. So Doris interviewed her husband, who was, his last name was Goodwin, and now his first name is escaping me, but he was a speechwriter for John F. Kennedy when he first launched his presidential campaign, through his presidency into LBJ's presidency. He left during that administration, but just the fact that this man was so close to leaders that did so much for our nation. And she also sprinkled in her experiences because she herself was a writer and worked in LBJ's White House towards the end of his career. So they did not meet, even though they both worked in the White House. Their tenures did not overlap. So it would be like another 10 years before they would meet each other. So fascinating. It was worth it. It was a little slow. Well worth the read though. And then the big thing was I needed an easy win. So the reason why there's so many physical books is because a friend lent me her copies of the Selection series by Kiera Cass. So you start with the Selection, you read then the Elite, the One, the Heir, the Crown, and then a compilation called Happily Ever After. Some of these books, I think the Elite and the One, I read these in less than a day. These are YA, so they were really quick to get through, but it was fun to get kind of sucked into that world for a time. So these are just a fun, easy read. And that is how I wrapped up November. Then we get into December. So December was a little harder. I was on a reading high from November, so the beginning of December was great. So November, I had 7 books. I think I'll have to double check that. Book club book was Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. That was it was a slow start, but the end was it's well worth the read on that one. The payoff was good in the end, in my opinion. I did switch. I had a book on my TBR that I had started in June, Mrs. Dalloway. I finally decided, like Wuthering Heights from October, the only way I was going to get through this was through an audiobook. So I ended up checking this out on Hoopla through my library and finished it that way. It was okay. It was hard. It was not as easy or as good as I had thought, or the hype had led me to believe. It is an interesting concept, that stream of consciousness. The whole story takes place over the course of a day, but there are flashbacks to previous histories. But it was good. I'm glad to do it, but not my favorite. I also listened to a book called The Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Garvis Graves. And what drew me to that is the location of the book. Part of it takes place in Chicago, and part of it takes place at the University of Illinois, which is my alma mater. So that was what kind of drew me to that book. And then I had 2 ebooks, both by Katie Roberts, both very spicy, very, very, very spicy. Quick reads, easy reads, but yeah, those were quite hot. So moving on from that, I ended up having 2 books that I had to DNF. So I attempted to start listening to Middlemarch, and I just couldn't get into it. And I think I need to have a game plan going into Middlemarch. I know that's on my TBR, like my all-time TBR. So hopefully I'll get there. But I think that one I'm going to have to figure out how to read it rather than just going straight for it. The other one was The New Menopause by Dr. Mary Claire Haver. Christmas was not a good time to try to start a nonfiction book about women's health. So I had to stop that one and return the book because it was a library book, and it just wasn't the season for me to read that. So hopefully I can get back to that. So that gives me a total for the 4th quarter of the year of 20 finished books and 2 DNFs. So a total of 22 books for the last 3 months, so October, November, and December of 2025. That gives me a total for the whole year, because I'm looking back over the whole year, from the beginning of January 2025 to the end of December 2025, I either read, listened, ebooked 56 books. I blew my goal of 30 books out of the water, and I am stunned by that. I know a majority, I didn't do the breakdown on how many were audiobooks versus physical books. I do know that I had a very high audiobook this year. It was one of those, if I was going to be listening to a podcast at some points, I decided I'd rather listen to a book. That kind of led into that, and also what is available through my local library, our Hoopla account. It's what I like. It's the easiest platform for me. I do know that the audiobooks I tend to gear towards classics. It just is a little bit nicer for my brain in that way. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, I know I had put in my 2025 to be read list, and just to see how I did on accomplishing that. So out of the books that I had listed in that video, which I'll link here, I read Ellie and the Heartmaker. So 6 books off of that TBR. A lot of them were classics and a few nonfiction, but that gives me a good insight to move forward on, like I said, Middlemarch. That's a book that if I ever get that read, I will feel great, but it's not something that I'm going to beat myself up about. I'm going to take the month of January 2026 and I'm going to work on, I've got a couple of books that I need to read. It's definitely been a slower reading month just with the holidays and getting back into the swing. Just haven't been feeling like reading. So we'll get there. We'll see how we do. But I'm going to use the rest of the month of January to kind of plan out the rest of my year, I hope, for reading and creating my TBR. So that hopefully will come books for in the next quarter of the year, starting back to quarter 1 of 2025. My top pick would have to be The Ghost and Mrs. Muir by R.A. Dick. That one, I love the book. It was so sweet and gentle, as well as the movie that goes with it. I absolutely love it. Then in the second quarter of the year, I'd have to say it has to be One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gellig. I just really enjoyed that. I was already stepping more and more into the fantasy genre, and that definitely took it in a different direction. Then for the third quarter, I would have to say my top book would be Onyx Storm. I really did enjoy, again, that fantasy world. It was great. And for the last fourth quarter of the year, my top book has to be The Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Garvis Graves. I just really liked the way that story was presented. It was an audiobook for me, so it had dual point of views for our characters, and both voice actors did a great job, and I really enjoyed it. So let this just show that you can thrive in however you consume books, whether it's through audio, e-readers, or physical books. And I hope that you will make a plan to read more in 2026 or read along with me.